Chapter 11, Western Europe. Lesson 1, the physical geography of Western Europe. This can be found on page 334. Our objectives for today are to identify the different landforms and waterways in Western Europe, to discuss the different climates found in Western Europe, and to describe important natural resources in Western Europe. While you're working to complete these objectives, the corresponding assignment that goes with your reading today is our guided reading activity. Let's just first introduce what skills we're looking for while we're reading to make sure that our comprehension is aimed at finding that information in our text. In the very first section, as we learn about the landforms and waterways in Western Europe, we're going to label the landforms and waterways that are described. So here are the definitions or the descriptions, and you're going to match those with the terms that we read about. In the second section of our lesson today, we're learning about the climate and vegetation. There's a T-chart. So you've got the marine west coast climate that will be highlighted and the Mediterranean climate, the two distinct climates that are in this region. You're to complete this T-chart by putting in important information into each of these areas. You can list bulleted items, don't have to write those in complete sentences. And lastly, as we read about the natural resources, you're going to complete the concept web. Obviously, there are many resources and energy resources specifically in this region, and we are looking to fill in the 5 different examples that are listed and highlighted in our text. Let's get into our reading for today. Landforms and waterways. You've probably seen images of Europe on television or in photographs. Maybe you've seen a movie showing a Dutch windmill or a windswept plain. You might have watched news clips showing cyclists racing through the rolling French countryside during a yearly sport called the Tour de France. These images show just a part of Western Europe and its varied landscape. Western Europe comprises the following nations: Ireland, United Kingdom, France, Luxembourg, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, Austria, and Switzerland. Belgium and the Netherlands and Luxembourg are often referred to as the Benelux countries. Western Europe also includes the tiny countries of Monaco and Liechtenstein, which have a combined population of fewer than 70,000 people. The low-lying plains. Western Europe's landscape consists of plains with mountains cutting through some spaces. Shaped by wind, water, and ice, these landforms have influenced the lives of the region's people. Much of Western Europe lies within an area called the Northern European Plain. France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and most of Germany are located on this plain. So you can see this green color on the map here. That's what they're referring to as it's the Northern European Plain. It comes across this area, and this is mostly a lowland area. Massive sheets of ice shaped the Northern European plain during the last ice age, which ended about 11,000 years ago. In some spaces or places, the melting glaciers left behind fertile soil, but also thick layers of sand and gravel. Ocean waves, currents, and winds have eroded these deposits in the sand dunes along some of the North Sea coastline. The glaciers also left behind areas of poorly drained wetlands along the North Sea and Atlantic coast in Ireland and the United Kingdom. Mountains and highlands. 2 mountain ranges, the Pyrenees and the Alps, separate Western Europe from neighboring nations in Southern Europe. Both mountain ranges divide the cooler climates to the north from the warmer, dry climate of the Mediterranean region to the south. So here you can see what are the Pyrenees mountains that separate. This is France and this is Spain down here, and then you've got the Alps that kind of separate what would be this western portion of Europe from the southern area towards the Mediterranean. To the southwest, the Pyrenees form a natural barrier between France and Spain, that's depicted here. This mountain range stretches 270 miles from east to west. Pico de Aneto, the tallest mountain in the Pyrenees, reaches a height of 11,164 feet. The average height of the Pyrenees, however, is only 5,300 feet. To the east of the Pyrenees lie the Alps, that's right over here. Like the Alps, the Pyrenees were created by the folding of rocks as a result of plate tectonics. Then these mountains were further shaped by glaciers. The Alps extend about 750 miles along the southeastern border of France through Switzerland, Austria, and Germany. The Alps are much larger and higher than the Pyrenees. The tallest mountains in the Alps is Mount Blanc at 15,771 feet. The Alps and the Pyrenees are geologically younger than other mountain areas in Western Europe that have been worn down by glaciers. The most extensive is called the Middle Rhine Highlands in Germany, Belgium, Luxembourg, and France. Its highest elevation is about 3,000 feet, so that's moving up into this region as it's being described. Here you can see a couple pictures of what those different mountain ranges looks like. As you get up to the highest peaks in the Alps, you're going to see that you're in a barren kind of landscape here with not much growing. The tree line is well below the heights of these, and they're snow-capped throughout most of the year. Here's what the Pyrenees look like with these stark contrasts in height and elevation, and a lot of the valleys where the people are populating those areas. Again, another picture of the Alps kind of a beautiful landscape to show that massive elevation change through that mountain range. Seas, islands, and waterways. Western Europe has long, irregular coastlines that touch many bodies of water, including the Atlantic Ocean, the North, Baltic, and Mediterranean seas. This closeness to the sea has long shaped European life. The North Sea is a part of the Atlantic Ocean but shallower. Separating the island of Britain from the rest of Europe, the North Sea is a rough, dangerous body of water to navigate. So this is the North Sea right here that's separating this island area from what would be the rest of Europe. It is also a rich fishing ground for the Netherlands and the United Kingdom. The North Sea has long been important for trade during the United Kingdom and the rest of Europe. It is also the location of large oil and natural gas reserves. The North Sea has helped but also hindered the Dutch, the people of the Netherlands. The Netherlands sit at a low elevation. 25% of the country is below sea level. To adapt, the Dutch have built dikes, which are walls or barriers to hold back the water. The Dutch call the land they reclaim from the sea polders. This land is used for farming and settlement. Stormy seas, however, have broken dikes and caused flooding in recent times. Just off the north coast of France lie the British Isles, or the Atlantic Archipelago, the islands of Britain and Ireland. You might think each of these a main island is its own country, but that is not the case. There are 4 parts of the United Kingdom: England, Wales, Scotland, and North Ireland. 3 parts, England, Wales, and Scotland, occupy the island of Britain. The 4th part, Northern Ireland, is the northeastern section of Ireland. The country of Ireland, or Eire, occupies all about the northeastern section of the island of Ireland. The English Channel is the part of the Atlantic Ocean that separates southern England from northern France. The Channel is a busy sea route connecting the North Sea with the Atlantic Ocean. In addition to the ships that travel the route, trains pass beneath this waterway. A tunnel runs through the rock under the water called the Channel. It houses a high-speed train that connects Britain to mainland Europe. Western Europe has a wealth of rivers and small waterways. The region's rivers have played an important role in how Europe has developed during the centuries. Rivers determine the locations of cities such as London, Paris, and Hamburg. Rivers provide transportation routes for goods and people. They also form some political borders. Rivers linked by canals provide transportation networks from inland areas to the sea. They also provide water and farming and electric power. You can see some of those rivers that are depicted here in France, in Germany, and how they go through each of these different areas. Here's one in the United Kingdom. The Thames River in southern England, speaking of that, right here near London, is one of the most well-known rivers in the world. The Thames flows from 205 miles from Cotswold Hills to the city of London. When it reaches London, the Thames becomes an estuary and extends for another 65 miles or kilometers, 105 kilometers, before it enters the North Sea. An estuary is where the part of the sea connects to the lower end of a river. So that would be right here as it's feeding into what would be the English Channel or the North Sea. The Rhine River is the busiest waterway in Europe. It begins high in the Swiss Alps and empties into the North Sea. So here you've got the Rhine River, begins in the Swiss Alps, and it's going to travel in this direction. Looks like it's traveling mostly north because you've got the highest elevation in this area. Historically, the Rhine River is the busiest waterway in Europe. It begins high in the Swiss Alps and empties into the North Sea. Along its course, it plunges over waterfalls, cuts deeply into the Middle Rhine highlands, and connects industrial areas to the port of Rotterdam. The Rhine meanders lazily across the plains of the Netherlands to the North Sea. The river serves as part of the political boundary between France and Germany. It runs through the most populated region of Europe. Another important waterway in Germany is the Elbe River, which also empties in the North Sea. Historically, the Elbe River is a part of the border between Western Germany and Eastern Germany when that country was split into two from 1945 to 1990. Another important river in Germany, the Danube, is different from other rivers because it flows toward the east. It passes through southern Germany and Austria on its way into Eastern Europe. The Danube is Eastern Europe's most important waterway. The Main River, a tributary of the Rhine, is linked to the Danube by the main Danube Canal. The canal links the North Sea with the Black Sea at the southeastern end of Europe. In France, the longest river is the Loire River. At a length of 634 miles, it passes through the Loire Valley, the most important agricultural region in France. It is the Seine River, however, which runs through the capital city of Paris, that carries far more of the country's inland water traffic. To sum up our reading on the landforms and waterways, we would say that the Pyrenees and the Alps are the two main mountain ranges that separate Western Europe and Southern Europe. Western Europe has long coastlines and various seas, and there are many rivers that have determined the locations of settlements and large cities such as London, Paris, and Hamburg. The reason why those cities were built there is because the river valleys offer ability for people to have easy transportation, and they seem to have a way in which there's fertile land surrounding those. So if you have food, you have water, you can build shelter. Those are places that are going to become settlements and then thrive in these areas. The next section, we're learning about the climate in this region. Western Europe is located at the northern latitudes, but it has a milder climate than other places at the same latitudes. For example, southern France is at roughly the same latitude as Halifax, Nova Scotia, in Canada, but southern France experiences a milder climate. Well, why is this? Western Europe is located near the Atlantic Ocean. Warm winds off the ocean are primarily factors that shape the region's climate. The temperate lowlands. Most of Western Europe lies in the path of the westerlies. As you can see here, this picture shows the western winds that are traveling from what would be a more warmer area in the Atlantic Ocean into this northern region, or the western region of Europe that we're talking about. Strong winds that travel from west to east. The westerlies blow a constant stream of relatively warm air from the sea to the land. Why is the air so warm this far north? Well, the answer is found on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, in the tropical waters of the Caribbean Sea. Here, an ocean current called the Gulf Stream moves tropical water north along the eastern coast of North America. Here's where those streams are. So the Gulf Stream here, the water is heated up by the excessive amount of direct sunlight that they're getting towards the tropics, and then that water moves in this direction towards Europe. The Gulf Stream that flows across the Atlantic Ocean, where its eastern extension, the North Atlantic Current, approaches the European coast. The current's warm water heats the air above it. This warm, moist air moves inland on the westerlies and brings mild temperatures and rain to most of Western Europe throughout the year. Summers are cool and winters are mild. This climate is known as a marine west coast climate. Most places that have a marine west coast climate have mountain ranges running north to south along the coast. The mountains block the warm, moist air from moving farther inland. Western Europe, however, does not have those coastal mountain ranges, so the westerlies blow farther across the European continent. So you've got warm air that's blowing this way, and you've got warm water that's coming this way that's contributing to a milder climate. They're saying that here in the Midwest, so here in Wisconsin at the base of the Great Lakes, if you go all the way straight across here, you're at relatively the same type of latitude, the distance away from the equator, yet they have warmer and more mild winters because they have this influence of warm air and warm water coming from the west. The Mediterranean climate area. So here you can see the picture of what these different climates look like, but as you go further south, you now have a difference in the climate based on its proximity to the Mediterranean and you're being closer to the equator. Other areas of Western Europe, such as the southern France, have a drier climate. A high-pressure system called the Azores High travel north over the Atlantic Ocean during the summer months. This pressure system pushes moist air northward. As a result, summers in southern France are hot and dry. In winter, the nearby Mediterranean Sea moderates the climate so that the winters are mild or cool. Most of the rainfall occurs in spring and autumn. This is called a Mediterranean climate. So you can see the difference here as you're closer to the water, that you have this really dry and warm climate in southern France. And here this purple and this dark area are going to be the difference in climate based on elevation. So here's where the Alps are that separate kind of what would be Western Europe from Southern Europe in this area. The climate. The westerlies are strong winds that travel from west to east across Western Europe. Warm winds off the ocean provide Western Europe with a mild climate, even though it's located at northern latitudes. And the Azores High is a pressure system that pushes moist air northward, producing a Mediterranean climate in southern France. Basically, two climates. The reason why they're a little bit warmer than other parts of the world is because of that influence of the warm air coming in from the ocean and the warm water that's coming from the currents in the ocean. Energy resources and natural resources. Western Europe has many important natural resources. Layers of coal lie beneath rich, fertile soil. Beneath the North Sea, you have large pockets of oil and natural gas. Western Europeans use these natural resources to support their economies and populations. Energy resources. Deposits of coal are plentiful throughout Britain, Belgium, and the Netherlands, France, and Germany. You can see all the plethora of energy resources from this map and this key that's showing you the different types of those resources in this area. Coal was used to fuel machines invented in the Industrial Revolution of the 1800s. Today, production is declining in Northern Europe. Much less coal is available than in the past, so the region is importing more coal. Coal has also become less important as a source of energy as people rely more on other energy resources to meet their needs. In places where other fuels are scarce, Europeans burn peat. Peat bog is a wetland in which large masses of vegetable matter decay in poorly drained soil. Peat, the name for the decaying vegetable matter, can be used as a fuel for heating. The peat is dug up, cut into blocks, and dried so that it can be burned. In 1959, oil and natural gas was discovered under the North Sea. Since then, the North Sea has become the region's most important source of these resources. The United Kingdom and the northern European nation of Norway are the leading producers of oil and natural gas from the North Sea oil fields. That'd be right up in this area. You can see the different production of oil and natural gas highlighted by those flames. Other countries in Western Europe use their rivers to supply energy. Switzerland, for example, uses its fast-flowing rivers to produce electricity. Hydroelectricity supplies more than half of Switzerland's electricity needs. Down here in the southern portion of what we call Western France, Switzerland has the Alps. So those Swiss Alps create that elevation change, which causes those rivers to move a lot faster. If you've got that energy that's naturally moving, you put a dam in the way and then constantly control that flow of energy, it turns that into hydroelectricity. Rich soils. The northern European plain has some of the richest soils in Europe, so people can farm there. Soils of the northern European plain contain humus. Humus is decomposed plant and animal material that makes soils rich and fertile and is good for growing crops and raising livestock. France is Western Europe's leading agricultural producer. France devotes more surface area to agriculture than any other country in the region. Large wheat fields stretch across northern France. Orchards and vineyards are common in the central and southern parts of the country. On the northern European plain, farmers grow a variety of crops and raise cattle and hogs. In the Netherlands, dairy and farming is important for the country's economy. The moderate climate and abundance of rainfall in most of Western Europe support a wide variety of plant and animal life. The British Isles have dense forests, grasslands, and scrubland, and wetlands. The natural vegetation in most of the British Isles is deciduous forests, which includes trees such as oak, maple, beech, and chestnut. So it's similar to kind of the topography that we have here and the types of trees that we have here. The deciduous forests are those that lose their leaves in autumn. The climate on the mainland of Europe is more diverse than the climate of the British Isles. As a result, mainland Europe has a wider variety of plant life. Farther inland in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, the drier climate as well as highlands and mountain ranges support other kinds of plants. Coniferous forests have become more common. Coniferous trees such as the fir and pine tree have cones and needles-shaped leaves, and they keep their leaves during the winter. Many of these peaks in the Alps and the Pyrenees lie above the tree line. Here, grasses and shrubs are the most common plants. Much of Western Europe was once covered in forests. Most of these forests were destroyed to make towns, cities, and roads. Wildlife. Animals have to adapt to these changes. Deer, wild boar, and hare and mice are common. Wild cats, lynx, and foxes roam the forest, and small population of brown bears live in the Pyrenees. In the British Isles, the population of large mammals such as wolves, reindeer, and boar has decreased. The islands have more than 200 kinds of birds, many of which have adapted to life in towns and cities. So back to that picture of the different types of natural resources. You can see that there's a wide variety of energy resources and other resources based on the topography and the location and proximity to the ocean in those areas. Coal is an important resource in Western Europe, and it helped fuel machines that were invented during the Industrial Revolution. Oil and natural gas are important in this area, but they weren't discovered until the 1950s. And Northern Europe has rich soil that makes it big time for farming and agricultural production. You can see some of that. The vineyards, what those look like with the standing plants that can grow in that vertical form, and the different types of wheat fields. Here's a combine that's taking care of harvesting those types of things because of the rich, fertile soils in this region. Hope that helps you complete your guided reading packet. Make sure that that's done and taken care of. God's blessings.